All right, this is our Unit 1, Week 2 overview. So just a reminder, in this unit, we're going to be tracing some of the major democratic developments that happened over the last several thousand years. And we will be covering this week Greek philosophers and the Roman Republic. And so let's jump into Greek philosophers. If you need it, on my website, there's a link to a notes page, which you can print out and take notes on, or just basically copy the format down, if that would be helpful to you. So first off, we're going to be talking about three different philosophers, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And they are philosophers that came in chronological order. So Socrates was Plato's teacher, and Plato was Aristotle's teacher. And so to remember the three of them in chronological order, there's a handy acronym, SPA, because their relation to each other does in fact matter. So keep that in mind as we move forward. So let's begin by talking about Socrates. So Socrates was considered by his students to be a great teacher. He was someone that really pushed them to have deeper understanding about what the world around them and about their beliefs. And his students were immensely loyal to him. They really believed in what he had to say, and they listened intently, and they thought that he was one of the greatest human beings on the planet. And he really did push them to think in new ways, especially through the development of what is today referred to as the Socratic method. And the Socratic method it's pretty simple when it comes down to it. It's just a way of probing deeper and deeper into your understandings, your beliefs, to try to get them on as solid ground as possible, right? Because I might say, oh, living back in ancient Athens, oh, I believe in the Greek gods. For Socrates, that wouldn't be enough. He would want you to dive deeper and deeper and deeper until you had a reasonable understanding and a reasonable conclusion about why you believed in the gods, why you thought they were real, why you thought they mattered, and so forth. And one way to think about Socrates, because through this method, was that, like, imagine a really kind of annoying 3-year-old who just continually asks why. To some extent, Socrates was kind of like that, because you might have these beliefs that, they're core to who you are. They really represent what you think. And then he would keep saying, why? Why do you believe that? Why do you believe that? Why do you believe that? And he believed that if he could poke holes in your arguments, then they really weren't very good arguments to begin with. So through the Socratic method, it helped people to craft better arguments. So to his students, he was wonderful. To a lot of the people of Athens, he was incredibly annoying. And ultimately, this questioning of everything led to his death. Late in his life, Socrates was arrested and put on trial for corrupting the youth and for disrespecting the gods. And again, this all goes back to that Socratic method, that he kept asking why. And this death sentence was handed down to him by a democratic jury in the most democratic state that had ever been, Athens. And he was given a chance. Some of his supporters came to him when he was arrested and offered him an escape, right? We'll get you out of this jail and we'll get you out of town and you can live. And he said no. And he stayed and was put to death. And through that, demonstrated the sort of absurdity of Athens, right? So last week we talked about the main characteristics of democracy. And we saw last week that Athens really exemplified two of those, citizen participation and popular sovereignty. But when it came to protection of rights and freedoms, they did horribly, right? Socrates was just speaking his mind, and he was put to death for that. So moving on to the next philosopher, Plato. And again, Plato was one of Socrates' students. Plato really admired Socrates, loved Socrates. And in fact, I forgot one thing from the last slide, Socrates never wrote anything. So largely what we know about Socrates, we know from Plato and other students, but primarily Plato. So Plato was one that really believed in reason. He believed in logic and reason, and that those should be guiding principles in our lives. That we shouldn't rely on passion and whim, but we should be able to think through problems, think through issues, and come to reasonable conclusions to those issues. And that was one of the largest things that he tried to teach people how to do. Plato, given his situation with his teacher Socrates, really distrusted democracy. He believed that democracy was just mob rule. It's ruled by a passionate mass of people, and that is incredibly scary, according to Plato. So he developed other ideas about what kind of rule would be best. And his ideas started from the position that all people are born equal. And from that, he concluded that the kind of traditional hereditary monarchy was probably not the best idea, right? Because since we are all equal, it doesn't really make 100% sense that, like, just because you're born to a particular family, that you would get to rule. So then, who, according to Plato, should rule? He ultimately viewed that you should have rule by the best, right? The people that showed through their life, through their time in school, whatever it was, that they were the most able to use reason and logic and not passion and whim to rule a society. And he believed that those rulers could come from anywhere in society. They could be the poorest, they could be the richest. They just had to demonstrate those qualities. And if they were able to demonstrate those qualities, then they could be the rulers. Ultimately, he kind of viewed that as being like philosophers, that those would be philosophers that would be ruling. Okay, our final philosopher here is Aristotle. And again, Aristotle was Plato's student. And while he very much admired and looked up to Plato, he did have some disagreements with him. So Aristotle believed that society, he also believed that the most reasonable people should rule, but he didn't necessarily believe that it should be just a handful of rulers or anything like that. He believed that ultimately the middle class was the part of society that would be the best to rule. He thought the poor, if they were given a chance to rule, would be vengeful. They've been treated so badly for their entire lives that given the chance to be in power, they would really take it out on those who had treated them poorly. And he thought the rich, if they were allowed to rule, would only enrich themselves. They would use the state to guard their wealth and make themselves more wealthy. Where he thought the middle class would be the most numerous and neither swayed by that vengefulness of the poor or that greed of the wealthy. Aristotle is also, one of his most important contributions is a deep discussion and explanation of the idea of rule of law, which we talked about last week. And rule of law means that the law applies to all, even the rulers. But it also means that when rulers come to power, they can't just get rid of old laws they don't like and on a whim make a bunch of new laws. The rulers come to power under a system of law, and it is their job to carry out that system of law. So you have a stable system of law in which the rulers operate. And that stops them from operating on whim and passion, would be his conclusion. And then final thing here, the best type of government, according to Aristotle, was what he would call a polity. Now, Aristotle thought that you could have different kinds of government that would be good and bad. So you could have rule by a single person that would be good, which would be a monarchy. But you could have rule by a single person that would be bad, that would be a tyranny. Polity was ruled by many people. And Aristotle viewed democracy as it existed in Athens as a bad form of rule by many people. He thought it was mob rule. But a polity is what he referred to as the good form of rule by many people. And it would still allow many people to be in charge, but you would have a system or a set of laws that would be in place that would protect others from, or would guide them in their rule. Okay, so democracy he viewed as just mob rule. A polity, I mean, a good way to think about it is our system today, where we do allow many people to rule, but we have a constitution in place, we have a system of laws in place, which guides them and which limits them. So the mob can't just do whatever they want at any given point, right? If there's someone out there with an unpopular idea, we have freedom of speech. And so we really are kind of living in what Aristotle viewed as a polity, which he viewed as one of the best systems of rule. All right, that is it.